Hi everyone! So, as always, if you would like to skip my spiel here at the beginning of the video and just skip straight to me talking about the movie, you can skip to this timestamp right here. It will be in the description if I remember to put it in the description. Otherwise, you could skip to this timestamp. But for everyone else, hi! Long time no see. Happy to be making another video for y'all again, especially this one because I feel like the last time I watched The Polar Express before writing my notes for the movie was, I feel like it had to be middle school or at least before 2020. So it's definitely been a while. And really, after making my notes, I noticed a lot more things in the movie now than I definitely did back when I was a kid, because this movie it just has so many different, well, I picked up two main themes, but very different themes going on that honestly you do not pick up as a child, or at least I didn't. The first time I watched The Polar Express, I was in kindergarten, and our teachers did one of those things where you watch the movie and you also experience the stuff happening in the movie as it's happening. So, we got hot chocolate when the kids got hot chocolate, we got bells when the kids got bells, like everything. And it was so much fun. But yeah, today I'm going to be talking about the Polar Express and also talking about all the wackiness and goofiness along with all the themes you probably miss if you just look at this as a simple Christmas movie. So yeah, this is your spoiler warning. I'm going to be talking about the movie and the plot from the beginning to the end of the movie. So if you want to watch the movie before I talk about this, or you don't want the movie spoiled for you even though the movie's been out since 2004, I would recommend you go watch the movie. But other than that, I recommend you grab some hot chocolate or maybe something to eat because we're gonna be here talking about the Polar Express. So let's get into the movie. So I would like to go over the names of the characters in this movie before we actually get into the movie, because one thing I noticed that I didn't notice when I was a kid is that majority of these characters do not actually have names, or their names aren't told to us. Out of everyone we see in this movie, only two characters are given real names. And so because of that, I am more so going to be referring to most of these characters by identifiers more so than names. I will say names of certain characters as they come up, but only when they come up. So let's go over the identifier names that I have given these characters and were given to these characters in the credits of the movie. Our first main character, his name is Boy. We'll just call him Boy for the entirety of this movie. Our second character is Girl. Makes sense. Our third character is Glasses. And then we have the younger sister of Boy, who is actually named, and her name is Sarah. And then for most of the movie, this character is not named, and so therefore I'll be calling him Boots for most of the movie. And then once his name actually comes up, which you will be surprised, he isn't named until about like the last 20-30 minutes of the movie. So we'll be calling him Boots until his name reveal comes up. So now actually getting into the movie. Our movie starts with a pan into this house where we first meet our main character, Boy. He's in bed, but you could tell he's not asleep. It's the night before Christmas, is Christmas Eve, and so he's a bit excited and a bit apprehensive and just basically awake. He's in bed till he hears like these bells shaking, and that's what prompts him to get out of bed, and he ventures downstairs. When he gets downstairs, he looks around the living room and he notices that Santa has not arrived yet. The cookies haven't been touched, there's nothing under the tree, and he kind of gets a bit disappointed by this, but then his disappointment gets interrupted when he sees a shadow that he thinks is Santa, but it turns out to be his father and his sister. And this is also when he realized the bell sound that he was hearing was coming from the Santa hat that his sister was wearing. Boy quickly runs upstairs so that his father doesn't discover that he was out of bed, and so he runs back into his room, and basically the scene I'm about to tell you, Boy is watching through the keyhole in his door. What he ends up seeing is his dad and his mother putting Sarah back to bed, and Sarah is telling them about all the things that Boy has told her, basically saying things like, Boy doesn't believe that Santa is real. Boy says it's really impossible for Santa to be able to deliver all those presents to all those kids and to be able to have a sleigh that can even carry all those presents. And really, overall, Boy just doesn't believe in Santa, or at least he has so much evidence in his mind that he's coming up with to more so believe he's not real than he is real. And this is further shown to us when Boy goes to his dresser and he reaches in and we see him reveal a bunch of articles that he has found proving that Santa is not real. And well, as he's checking his articles, it sounds like his parents are coming into his room, so he quickly gets into bed again and acts like he is asleep. And one of the comments his parents make before leaving the room again is, they're surprised that he's fast asleep and he used to be excited and ready for Santa to come like Sarah, and he's just growing up, is what they assume is the reason he's not as excited. Eventually, after laying in bed for a while, Boy does in fact fall asleep, and he is woken up again at 11:55 p.m. And I specifically say that he's woken up at 11:55 p.m. Remember that, because it comes up later. When he is awoken, he's looking around the room and all of a sudden his entire room starts to shake. You would think there was an earthquake going on. And then he hears a train, sees a train light, and so what he does is he grabs his robe, and his robe gets stuck on his bedpost, tearing one of his pockets, but that does not stop him. He still puts in his robe, goes downstairs, opens the front door, which, pause a second. Does his parents not have a security system? That was my first question. Because at Boy's age, if I even thought about leaving the house, that wasn't a possibility because I didn't know the security code to the house to turn off the alarm. And if I opened the front door, the alarm would go off. So I was just always like, oh, I could never be Boy. I'd be discovered before I even got started. Anyways, Boy runs outside and sees a train stopped in front of his house. As Boy is just looking at this train, which I am guessing that normally there isn't like train tracks in front of his house in the middle of his neighborhood. So as he's just like, looking at this train, a conductor yells for him to board the train. He like literally yells, "All aboard!" Chaka, chaka. Anyways, and so Boy goes up to the conductor, which that's the only name he's given this entire movie, so we'll be calling him the conductor. And he explains to Boy that the train behind him is called the Polar Express and that it will be heading to the North Pole. And immediately Boy is skeptical as to why the train has stopped for him. And the conductor actually pulls out a clipboard and shows it to Boy, and he's like, "Is this you?" And Boy is like, "Yes." So I'm assuming either there was like a picture or the boy's name actually written on the clipboard, because we never see the clipboard. But then conductor turns the clipboard back to him and he actually says, and I wrote down everything he says to Boy because I thought this was very interesting. The conductor specifically says that the reason that they're picking up Boy is that he didn't write any notes to Santa, he didn't take any photos with any mall Santas, and he made his sister put out the milk and cookies. He didn't even participate in doing it with her. And then the conductor explicitly states that the reason the Polar Express is picking him up is because this is a crucial year for him. Even after saying all of this, Boy is still not on board with it, and the conductor never forces any of the kids he picks up to get on the Polar Express. He asks them once, and if they express that they don't want to get on the train, then he's like, okay, and then he gets back on the train and the train starts to pull off, and that is exactly what happens to Boy. But then Boy changes his mind and quickly jumps onto the Polar Express. Almost as if he knew this was going to happen, the conductor is waiting there and he escorts Boy into the main train car of the Polar Express. In this train car, Boy right away meets Glasses and Girl. Glasses starts talking Boy's ear off about the type of train that they are on, what's happening, and just like all these facts that he knows. And Girl, honestly, I just think about that one picture where she's kind of like hunched over and just smiling. Like this entire time, she's a bit more chill about it, and she's just excited to go to the North Pole and to meet Santa because this girl just loves Christmas. Next, the conductor comes around asking the children for tickets, and when he gets to Boy, Boy's like, "I don't have a ticket," and the conductor is like, "Well, check your pocket." And so he checks one pocket, and I believe it is his right pocket. He puts his hand in it and sees that there is a hole, comes up later, and then he checks his left pocket and realizes that he in fact does have a ticket. So he hands the ticket to the conductor, and the conductor specifically punches the letters B and E into Boy's ticket. Then Glasses decides to show Boy his ticket, and the conductor has specifically punched the letters L and E into his. Then the train makes one more stop before heading to the North Pole, and they stop at Boot Boots. Oh my gosh, I just realized that Dora's monkey is called Boots. Anyways, they stop at Boots's house. At this last stop, we see the conductor do the same exact spiel. Not, we don't hear it, but we see him have this kind of back and forth with this little boy who we're calling Boots for now. And Boots doesn't get on the train the same way Boy didn't. So the conductor, gets back on and the train starts to take off. And like Boy did, Boots decides that he, in fact, does want to get on the Polar Express. But when he decides to get on the train, it was at a later point than when Boy tries to get on the train. So Boots is really having to run after the train, and he ends up falling in the snow, practically missing the train. And Boy is watching this entire thing, so what he actually does to give Boots a chance to get on the train and be able to catch up is he goes to the back of the train car and pulls the emergency lever to stop the train. And this actually gives Boots a chance to get on, and he ends up getting on and sitting in the cart of the train behind the main cart where all the kids are. The conductor immediately comes back to the main car, obviously because someone pulled the emergency bar to stop the train, and he's kind of reprimanding Boy until he finds out why Boy decided to stop the train, which was for Boots. And one reason I mention this is because the conductor, when he is disciplining, and I use that word very loosely, but when he is like quote unquote disciplining the kids, he's very tame about what he is saying. He has this kind of like stern whimsy to him when he like is being like, to these kids, which I just found was interesting. Because after he finds out like why Boy stopped the train, a normal conductor would have still, been pissed off about it, but he's like, oh, that's fine, okay. And then he's like, well, do y'all want drinks? And everyone's like, yeah. And he's like, thought so. And then it goes into the scene where the kids are all getting hot chocolate and he's just on the mic singing. And beyond just the magic of this scene, one thing we see happen is that girl, when she receives her first cup of hot chocolate, she actually slips it under the seat. And then she receives a second cup of hot chocolate. And when she's finished drinking her cup, and the tables have been cleared, everybody's empty cup of hot chocolate has been cleared, and now the main cart is as it was before. Girl actually reaches under her seat to retrieve the extra cup of hot chocolate that she got and starts to head toward the back to give it to Boots. And she actually gets stopped by the conductor, and like I said, he kind of has this stern whimsy to him, and so he's kind of like, why do you have an extra cup of hot chocolate? And of course, she explains to him that she saved it for Boots. And the conductor's like, he didn't get any? And she's like, well, no, yeah, he didn't get any. And he's like, let's go take him some. Oh my gosh. And so, as we see the conductor and girl in the train car giving Boots his hot chocolate, we cut back to the main train car where Boy notices that girl forgot her ticket. So he grabs her ticket, which he could have left it on the seat. All she was doing was giving the hot chocolate to Boots and then coming right back. She wasn't going to stay back there. Like, she was going to come back to her seat. So he could have left it on the seat. But, like I said, he decides to grab the ticket and starts to head to the cart behind the main cart. And what ends up happening is that as he's trying to cross these train cars with the ticket in hand, the ticket ends up flying out of his hand. And so he runs back through the main train car to try to retrieve the ticket, but just ends up completely losing it. And it's very interesting because what we end up seeing happen is kind of like this domino effect where this ticket, at first it runs into wolves, and then it runs into, I believe, a hawk, and then it turns into a snowball, and just throughout all these like domino circumstances, the ticket ends back up on the train and gets stuck in the vent by kind of like, if the emergency lever is on the right side, the vent is on like the left side, just right above the seats. But before anybody can even see that the ticket has landed back there, the conductor asks girl for her ticket so that he can punch it. And so when girl can't find her ticket, the conductor's like, you lost it? And Boy immediately gets up and reveals that he lost her ticket. She didn't lose her ticket, which I was kind of surprised because, as we know, most kids in that situation, or at least kids I'd been around when I was a kid, would not have revealed that they were in fact the one that lost somebody else's ticket. They would have been like, that kind of sucks for you. I don't know where it is. Even though these are, cartoon characters, I just thought it was interesting. But even though Boy does admit to losing it, the conductor is like, well, she doesn't have a ticket, and so he takes Girl with him. They leave from the main train car, go through the train car that Boots is in, and then they start to head even further back off the train. And then to save Girl, Boy decides that maybe it's a bright idea to stop the train again. So he goes to try to pull the emergency train lever again, and then he notices a ticket, Girl's ticket, in the vent just flapping back and forth. So he grabs the ticket and he tries to go after the conductor and Girl, which leads him to the top of the train. Why getting to the top of the train is so easy is beyond me. But Boy is now trekking his way across the top of the train, surprisingly not flying off. And before he runs into the conductor and Girl, he ends up running into this man, who we'll just simply be calling Man because he's not given a name like most of the characters in this movie. And when he approaches Man, Man is just on top of the train, sitting down with a fire, cooking something, just chilling on top. They have a convo, and I kind of like summarized what the conversation was initially about. And basically, through this conversation, we learn that Boy wants to believe in Santa. Like, it's something that he genuinely wants to do. But what I wrote here is that he doesn't want to be like gaslit about it. He doesn't want to be duped. The way to like further explain this is like he wants to experience the whimsy and the joy and the magic that comes with being a kid and believing in Santa, but he doesn't want to fully immerse himself into the magic of Santa and Christmas and all that, and then find out that none of it is real, like he sees in the articles, and like he just keeps being proven with everything that he has experienced up until this point. And one thing Man does tell him is that, seeing is believing. And then Boy asks if the train that they are on, the Polar Express, is a dream, which I think is a valid question because a random train with a conductor that knew your name showed up in front of your house that normally more than likely doesn't have train tracks running through it. It's a fair question. And Man honestly is kind of like, he doesn't say this directly, he says something else because Man talks in kind of like a very cryptic way, but he's kind of like to Boy, if you believe it's a dream, then it is a dream. And then Man also asks him if he believes in ghosts, and Boy's like, no, I don't. And Man is just kind of like, that's interesting. And we'll get back to that part later. But Man does decide to help Boy trek down the rest of the top of the train to get to Girl. And Man is walking ahead of Boy, and Man disappears right in front of Boy's eyes. I don't think Boy actually sees it though. We as the audience see it. I guess to Boy it kind of looked like because of how strong the snowstorm was, he just disappeared because of how far ahead he was of him. Then Boy kind of has this scene with himself where now he fully believes that he is in a dream, and he tries to wake himself up and it doesn't work. He like washes his face with snow. He kind of like just like tries, and it doesn't work. He's not dreaming. And then Man comes back, and now he's wearing, what are those, ski shoes, with like the sticks. He's wearing those, and he also has the ski sticks, and he gets Boy on his back, and he's telling him, we have to make it to the engine room of the train before we hit the tunnel. So Man skis Boy down to the engine room and leaves him there, where Boy does actually end up finding Girl. And all Girl has been doing in this engine room is helping the engineers with the train. We'll call the engineers Beard and Baldy. That's just the names I gave them because they're not named. She basically tells him that Beard and Baldy just wanted her help, and as they were fixing the front of the train, she was just making sure everything was working and looking good in the engine room. As they are having this conversation, Baldy does end up yelling to Girl to stop the train, which she does, and when she does, of course the conductor comes to see why the train has been stopped, and he sees Boy in the engine room, and he's like, why have you stopped the train again? And then all of them look out the window, and we see a pack of hundreds and hundreds of caribou just on the tracks, and then this is why the train is stopped. As they're kind of looking at this pack of caribou and not knowing like what steps to take next to be able to clear the track, somehow the conductor ends up accidentally or intentionally, I don't remember, pulling on Beard's beard. And when he pulls on his beard, Beard screams. And the caribou respond to Beard's screams. The conductor just keeps doing this, just pulling on his beard, and the caribou start to clear the track. And so that allows the train to continue forward towards the North Pole. And so since the train is going, Baldy and Beard are back in the engine room, but the conductor is still out on, there's like this railing and they're standing in the front of the train. The conductor is out there with boy and girl, and he notices that the train is accelerating very, very fast down the track. And so the conductor like kind of secures himself to boy and girl because he knows they are about to hit a very bumpy, very turbulent part of the tracks that are very like steep. And basically what happens is they kind of like go on this roller coaster in the front part of the train as the train is just speeding. At one point, as the train is speeding, it ends up going over this bed of ice that is blocking the tracks. Like the tracks go this way and the ice is just covered over top of it. So girl almost ends up falling out of the train, but who ends up saving her is the conductor is holding on to girl, and then man actually appears and holds on to boy so they can all bring girl back into the train. And man like winks at boy, and then he ends up disappearing right in front of boy's eyes. So the question he asked boy about if he believes in ghosts earlier, if he didn't believe in ghosts, he definitely believes in ghosts now. Eventually they steer the train off the ice and back onto the tracks, and now the train is moving forward normally. The boy returns girl's ticket to her, which allows the conductor to punch her ticket, and he ends up punching the same letters LE into girl's ticket. Then the conductor leads girl and boy back to the main train car. As they are heading through different cars to get to the main train car, they end up going through this car full of toys. And the conductor explains that Santa, instead of just leaving these toys out to rot, wanted to bring these toys from all around the world that had been abandoned in alleys and in messed up condemned buildings onto the cart so they can have somewhere to be. It was kind of like the train car was its own mini island of lost toys. Boy ends up falling a bit behind girl and the conductor, and as he is in the cart alone, he ends up getting scared by this puppet, and this puppet is actually being manned by man. He's like at the top of the car, like being a puppeteer. And one thing I like noticed in this scene that I hadn't noticed before was man, when he's using the puppet, he's calling boy like Scrooge and things like this, just basically referring to different characters and stuff who also have this gripe with Christmas. And I thought that was very interesting because I'd never noticed that before. But boy makes a final run and makes it back to the main train car where everyone else is. But boy isn't back in the main train car for long, because as Glasses is trying to talk his ear off again, he notices that in the cart behind the main train car, girl is back in that second cart. And so he follows behind, and as boy approaches girl, they both notice that Boots is in the back of the car singing to himself. And of course, this is that, I just call it's iconic to me. Maybe not to anybody else. But then girl joins in and they start singing like, a little duet. But something I noticed in the duet that I didn't notice as a kid was the lyrics that they are kind of singing back and forth, because their experiences with Christmas are very different, and that's very prevalent in the lyrics, which I've kind of wrote down a gist of what these lyrics are saying. Because when you listen to Boots's lyrics on his experience with Christmas, they highlight that Boots does in fact love Christmas and love the Christmas season, but Santa has never visited his house, and he doesn't completely understand why that is. He concludes at one point during the song that maybe Santa has just been too busy to visit him. And while in general, all his experiences with Christmas have just been through word of mouth and visuals. Versus girl, when she is singing, she is talking about the joy of Christmas, the joy of family members and friends coming from near and far to join together and enjoy Christmas. She talks about presents. She also talks about putting up Christmas trees, just like all the fun things that people get to do during Christmas. And one thing I mentioned here was poverty versus privilege is kind of what this song highlighted to me. And even though their experiences with Christmas are very different, one thing I noticed throughout the song is that they are still united in their love for Christmas and their belief in Santa, which is something that Boy doesn't share with them. And as the song is happening, he's just kind of standing there watching it all take place. So I thought that was very interesting. Then the conductor comes to let them know that they are close to the North Pole, and then we get the iconic, everything's iconic about this movie, so don't judge me. Then we get the song that kind of popped off on TikTok. I love the remix to it. As they are pulling into the North Pole, the conductor lets the kids know that all the elves and everybody else, well, just the elves, are gathered in the city center, and that is where they are heading to, because in the city center, there's going to be a ceremony where Santa gifts one of the kids the first present of Christmas. So when the train comes to a stop, the conductor gets off and starts having the kids form two lines so that they can, head in. And so majority of the kids are off the train. The only one that is on the train is Boots, and Girl is the first one to notice that Boots has not gotten off the train. So Girl starts to head back on the train to get Boots, and of course Boy follows her. But as Boy is getting onto the second train car, not the main one, but the one that Boots is in, his robe gets caught on this lever. And so as he gets onto the train, it kind of pulls this lever, separating the main car from the second car that the kids are getting onto. But now on the cart, Boy and Girl are trying to convince Boots to get off the train. And as this is happening, the now loose car starts heading back down the tracks. Instead of heading back down the path that they took to get into the city, the paths switch and they end up heading further into North Pole City, where eventually the cart does stop at this kind of like crossroads. Girl, Boots, and Boy get out of the train and are trying to figure out what they should do because they don't know where they are, when Girl starts to hear these bells. And we as an audience during this point in the movie cannot hear the bells, and it is because we are still experiencing the movie from Boy's perspective, because Boots can hear the bells as well. And so Girl gets the idea to use the sound of the bells to help them get back to the city center. They eventually make it to what I call the elf call and monitoring center. It's basically like this room where the elves can check on whether kids are naughty and nice. And so as they are in this room, kind of like crouched down so they don't get discovered by the elves, they notice the elves use this transport machine that could lead them to the city center. And so Girl gets the idea that they should use the same exact transport machine to get there. And so they get on it, and they don't end up at the city center. They end up making it to the wrapping workshop. Still lost, and in the workshop, they start to kind of head down these conveyor belts that aren't moving, still using the bells to guide their path. But as they continue to walk, eventually Girl says that she can no longer hear the bells and that they are lost. And not even a moment later, the conveyor belt starts to move again. And so the kids are on these like side platforms right next to the conveyor belt. And as this present passes them, Boots notices the name on the present. And the name on the present is Billy. And then he also sees the address on the present and sees that it is his address. So in this scene, almost 30 minutes before the movie is over, we find out that Boots' real name is Billy. So from now on, we will call Boots Billy, and Girl and Boy are still Girl and Boy. So after seeing his present heading down the conveyor belt, Billy gets this smart idea to jump on the conveyor belt and go after the present. And of course, not wanting to leave him behind, Girl and Boy also jump on the conveyor belt to go after Billy. And all the kids end up sliding down and through this intricate system that all the presents go down, and they end up plopping on top of this pile, this like gigantic pile of presents. The presents get tied up in this gigantic bag, which we learn just visually that this is Santa's sack that he carries all his presents in. And the sack starts to get airlifted to the city center. As Billy, girl, and boy are just kind of over the side looking out into North Pole City, something grabs Billy's foot. And so boy and girl try to pull Billy back up, and eventually when they're able to pull Billy back up, they discover that Glasses is also in Santa's sack with them. So when the bag lands on Santa's sleigh, the elves come up to the kids and are like, y'all gotta get out of here. And so the elves nicely help the kids down off the bag, and they are reunited with the conductor and all the other kids in the city center. And shortly after, the ceremony starts. And I think the first part of this ceremony is kind of the elves putting together Santa's sleigh, like attaching the reindeer to the sleigh. And then they also attach these bells to the sleigh. And as they are holding these bells and taking them up to the sleigh, they start shaking the bells up and down. And so, again, we are still watching all of this from Boy's perspective. So as he sees these bells being shook up and down, he's expecting to hear a sound as any of us would, but every time the elves shake these bells, he hears nothing, but people around him are cheering and clapping and super excited, and he's just confused. And after the bells get attached to the sleigh, Santa comes out, but in this scene, Boy can't actually see Santa at first because all the elves start like sitting on each other's shoulders and basically blocking Boy's view. And I was thinking in this scene, I'm like, if they're blocking Boy's view by just literally stacking themselves on top of each other, I can't imagine like which of the other kids are too short to see because these elves can't stay ground level. Like literally 2 to 3 elves just sitting on top of each other. Like why? But Boy is reasonably getting frustrated that he can't see Santa. Again, he wants to believe in Santa and he wants to believe in Christmas magic and stuff, but he can't hear the bells. Everyone is seeing Santa. He can't see Santa. So again, he's just getting very flustered and very frustrated. And then he notices one of the bells fall off of the little, we'll just call it garland. It's not garland, but it's kind of like that like garland shape. The one of the bells falls off of the little garland and rolls straight up to him. And so he picks it up and he shakes it by his ear and he still can't hear anything. So that just further adds to his frustration. And so Boy kind of has this moment to himself in his frustration where he just tries to calm himself down and he realizes that he needs to believe in Christmas. So in that moment, he's just letting go of all his apprehension and all his fear around being gaslit about Christmas. And once he lets that go, he then again decides to shake the bell by his ear. And this time he hears the bell ring. And when he takes the bell from his ear and he just brings it down in front of him, now surprised that he could actually hear it ring, in the reflection of the bell, you could just see Santa come up to Boy. I'm just laughing because I'm just picturing the scene in my head, and just if you're looking at this bell and just all of a sudden you see this red suit and this white beard come up to you, you're just gonna be like, just gobsmacked. And so Boy turns around to finally, in person, see Santa. I'm happy for him, honestly. Boy gives the bell back to Santa, and after making a little speech, Santa decides to choose Boy to be the kid he wants to give the first present of Christmas to. And I saw someone on I didn't watch the entire video. I just saw the beginning of the video where this person was like, they believe that Billy should have been the kid that Santa gave the first present to. And again, I didn't watch the entire video, so I didn't hear their reasoning, but I definitely agree with them. I understand that Boy, this was his crucial year, as the conductor said, but like Santa, as Billy has said, has never visited him. He's never gotten a Christmas present, in his own words. And even through all of that, he still believed in Santa. And yet Santa chooses Boy, which I'm not saying Boy didn't deserve it. I'm just saying, as an adult looking at this, I definitely myself would have probably probably chosen Billy. But the elves lead Boy up to Santa's sleigh, and Santa asks Boy what he wants his present to be. And we don't hear what Boy says because he ends up just whispering into Santa's ear. But when Santa makes an announcement to the crowd, he says that the first present of Christmas he will be giving out is the bell that fell off of his sleigh. And as everyone is cheering, Santa specifically tells Boy that the bell represents the spirit of Christmas. And then the clock finally chimes 12 a.m. Now it is Christmas. Do you remember at the beginning of the movie when I tell you Boy woke up at 11:55 p.m.? And now, after everything I've covered, it is officially 12 a.m. So, if we are doing our calculations correctly, the majority of the Polar Express movie takes place in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Just think about that. Boy gets off of Santa's sleigh, putting the bell in his right pocket as he is doing so, and he rejoins the rest of the kids, and they all watch as Santa takes off to deliver presents to the rest of the world. As they are watching this all happen, Billy goes up to Boy and is kind of like, is this all a dream? Like, are we all dreaming? And Boy finally says no, which I think just highlights again how now he believes in everything he is seeing and everything he is experiencing and believes in Christmas again, believes in the magic. And then the elves start partying, like they start partying real hard, and the kids start to just head back to the train to head home. And as they are reboarding the train one by one, the conductor punches their tickets again. And remember when I said earlier that he punched only certain letters into each person's ticket? Like, for example, he only punched the letters LE into Glasses' ticket. Now at this point, when he punched Glasses', you understand what I'm saying. Ticket again. Glasses looks at the ticket and it says learn on it. Then next he punches Billy's ticket. And on Billy's ticket, at first, it says depend on. And then Billy flips the ticket and it says rely on. And then he flips it again and it says count on. Then he punches girl's ticket and it says lead. Lastly, he punches Boy's ticket and it says believe, which I've always thought this part was really cool because, again, it just kind of reflects what they have learned about themselves on the journey, what they need to take home with them. Because I highly doubt the ticket disappears once they, leave the train. Otherwise, he wouldn't have punched it like that. I don't know. If you really think about it, even though the kids might have not all walked away being gifted the first present of Christmas, they get a little something something to take home from visiting Santa, getting on the Polar Express, which I feel like maybe as a kid I would have been just a little salty that I didn't get picked, but being able to get that ticket, I think I would have been happy with that as well, since I didn't get picked. And so now back on the train, all the kids are very excited and they want to see the present that Boy got from Santa. And so as he reaches into his pocket to retrieve the bell, Homeboy just feels air. And we get a pan to his robe that he put the bell in, and it is in the pocket that he tore. So he wiggling his fingers through the hole in the bottom of it, and the bell is nowhere to be found. And so the girl's like, oh, it's okay, let's just go back out and find it. And as all the kids start to head out to look for the bell, the train starts moving, and now there is really nothing they can do about it. His bell is just gone. In this moment, I was wondering why he didn't try to stop the train again, like he has tried to do. He's succeeded once and tried to do another time. I was just like why didn't he think to do that again? But he doesn't, and the train starts to just really take everybody home. The first person we watch get off the train is Billy, and we get this cute little scene where he kind of heads into his house and he comes back outside holding the present that he had gone after initially in the wrapping workshop. Then next, Boy gets off the train and Girl and Glasses say their goodbyes to Boy as he gets off. And as he heads down the stairs, the conductor is waiting for him, and Boy thanks the conductor for picking him up. And as the train starts to head back down the tracks, Man appears on the top of the train and Boy wishes him a Merry Christmas. And in their last interaction, Man just simply waves Boy goodbye. Then Boy heads back into his house and he stops in his living room room again before heading upstairs and kind of looks around and sees that Santa hasn't showed up yet. But different than how it was in the beginning of the movie, he isn't as disappointed by this. He's kind of, he knows Santa is coming, so he just heads upstairs. And then we get a cut to Boy in his room asleep, and his sister barges in, just simply stating that Santa has arrived. Santa has brought them their presents. Boy quickly gets out of bed and he goes to grab his robe off the bedpost again, and this time his robe gets stuck again, ripping his pocket. I don't know why it was highlighted this second time that his pocket got ripped. I do think it is interesting that it was highlighted that his pocket got ripped again in this second scene, because in the original scene, as he rips his pocket, marbles fall to the floor, and now at the end of the movie he rips it again and marbles fall again. So again, I don't know why it was highlighted. I'm just pointing out to you that this was specifically highlighted again at the end of the movie, and if you have any guesses as to why that is, please feel free to put them down in the comments below. Then after the scene, we kind of cut forward a bit, and it's a little after the kids have opened majority of their presents, and his little sister Sarah heads under the tree to see that there is just one present left, and it is addressed to Boy. And when Boy opens this last present, when he opens the box, he sees that it is his bell that Santa has gifted to him. Boy shakes the bell and still hears the chime from it. Sarah also hears the chime as well, but as he is shaking the bell and the parents come into the room, his mom makes a comment about, the bell being broken. Like, she kind of apologizes to Boy and is like, "Oh, I'm sorry, bud. Sorry it doesn't work." But before our movie ends, we get a little narration from the narrator, who also narrated in the beginning of the movie. I didn't highlight it before because the narrator only showed up at the beginning and now at the end, but the narrator is actually an older version of Boy. So our entire story that we've seen is actually Boy as an older man retelling the story of the Polar Express. His parting words to us are, and I quote, "At one time, most of my friends could hear the bell, but as years passed, it fell silent for all of them. Even Sarah found one Christmas that she could no longer hear its sweet sound. Though I've grown old, the bell still rings for me, as it does for all who truly believe." Then our camera fades to black, and then we get credits. I think now, as an adult, after watching The Polar Express, I appreciate it more than I did when I was a kid. When I was a kid, it was about fun, but now it's about layers. You notice all the layers, and it's just a good movie. But yeah, that is all I have to say about The Polar Express. I hope you enjoyed this movie. If you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more of me. I hope you have a good weekend, weekday, weeknight. I hope you have a good rest of the holiday season, and bye.